Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the incredible story of a living artifact. And no, we're not talking about some dusty relic sitting silently behind a pane of glass in a museum. We're talking about an institution that has survived over 2.5 centuries, one that's been actively participating in and recording the human experience literally every single day. So let's start with a quick thought experiment to hook you right in. Imagine a single entity that was actually there to witness the birth of a nation, one that reported on the absolute devastation of the Civil War, watched humanity take to the skies and eventually into space, all the way through to the digital age we live in today. If a newspaper could remember everything, well, what exactly would that memory look like? The answer actually lies in the number 260. The Hartford Courant has been continuously publishing for an astounding 260 years. Just to put that into perspective for a second, this publication was rolling off the presses well before the United States of America was even a country. It is widely recognized as the absolute oldest continuously published newspaper in the U.S.
Part 1. Birth of a Record. 1764, Colonial Hartford.
Let's zoom all the way back to 1764. Hartford, Connecticut was this growing colonial community in British North America. Think about it. No internet, no TV, zero radio. If you wanted to know what was going on outside your own town, you depended entirely on printed material. Information truly was power, and a man named Thomas Green stepped right into that void, publishing the very first issues of the Connecticut Courant. Now today, we expect instant global transmission of news with a simple tap on our phones, right? But back then, wow, every single letter had to be arranged using individual pieces of metal type. The ink was prepared and rolled completely by hand. The heavy press was operated manually for every single page. It was literally hours upon hours of grueling physical labor just to get the news into the hands of the public.
Part 2. The Patriot Publisher. Hannah Bunce Watson's Early Test.
To truly understand how this institution survived through centuries of upheaval, we have to look at the people behind the paper. Because institutions don't just survive on their own, they are carried by remarkable individuals. When publisher Ebenezer Watson passed away in 1777, his 27-year-old widow, Hannah Bunce Watson, stepped up. She took over the paper, becoming one of America's very first female publishers. She is an absolutely vital part of the Courant's history, but for a long, long time, her massive contributions were totally overlooked.
Looking at this original header from January 1778, you can see the paper continued right along under her watchful eye. And listen, she didn't just quietly maintain the status quo. No way. Despite the immense, chaotic challenges of the era and her own lack of prior business experience, she used her printing press to fiercely support the Patriot cause across all 13 colonies. She was out there sharing news of victories and openly defying British authority. And Hannah's hurdles were truly extraordinary. Remember, she was a young widow with 5 young children to care for, and right in the middle of the Revolution, the paper mill she co-owned burned to the ground. This was a devastating fire, widely suspected to be sabotaged by British loyalists. But did she stop? Absolutely not. While they were rebuilding the mill, she kept the Patriot cause alive in print. She sometimes even resorted to printing smaller, one-page newspapers on actual wrapping paper, just to make sure the news got out. Talk about resilience.
Part 3. Witnessing American History. A rapid-fire look through eras.
By surviving those brutal early tests, the Courant cemented itself as way more than just a local paper. It became a critical, daily witness to macro-level American history, actively facilitating the public debate of a brand new nation. Just take a look at this timeline. From the Revolution in 1775 to the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, through the World Wars, the Great Depression, the Space Age, all the way to the tragedies of 2001. The newspaper functioned as the daily conversation and connection for citizens through every major crisis. It adapted from steam-powered presses to photography and eventually to the internet.
And it wasn't just observing from the sidelines. The Courant was actively participating in the political evolution of the country. For example, historical archives show how the paper captured the sheer, agonizing complexity of the debate over slavery. They were simultaneously publishing ads for the capture of fugitive slaves while writing in stark opposition to the Fugitive Slave Act. Ultimately, the paper became a staunch, highly vocal supporter of Abraham Lincoln's 1860 presidential campaign, actively pushing the needle of national discourse.
Fast forwarding to the 21st century, this legacy of meticulous documentation absolutely continued. Over at the New York Public Library, you can find extensive research files from Eric Lipton, a former Hartford Courant reporter who went on to win Pulitzers.
His deeply archived work on the September 11th attacks meticulously documents the 102 minutes inside the World Trade Center towers, the emergency rescues, and the deeply personal survivor accounts. It perfectly demonstrates how legacy media alumni carry forward that profound commitment to recording the most difficult moments in our history.
Part 4. The Modern Threat. Hedge funds and the digital age.
But here comes the modern plot twist. After surviving actual fires, the birth of a nation, the Civil War, and the massive upheaval of the Industrial Revolution, the paper now faces a distinctly modern existential threat. The whole business model of newspapers changed drastically with the arrival of the internet. Readers could suddenly get news instantly, and advertising revenue just plummeted. This massive shift left highly vulnerable, historic legacy papers open to being acquired by large financial entities and hedge funds. And that is shifting the landscape of local journalism entirely. This situation actually became so prominent that Connecticut's Attorney General William Tong stepped in. He launched an official investigation into the hedge fund Alden Global Capital's acquisition of Tribune Publishing, which is the company that owns the Courant. In a state press release, the Attorney General publicly expressed severe concerns about the fund's history of shuttering newsrooms across the country and what that could ultimately mean for the future of journalism in the state. At the very heart of that state investigation is a core conflict. On one side, you have the historical mission of a 260-year-old journalistic institution. This is a paper meant to invest in critical local reporting to hold government and institutions accountable. But on the other side, the Attorney General's office points to a strictly profit-driven financial model, a model that they argue results in draconian cuts purely at the expense of that journalistic mission in order to line pockets.
Part 5. The Living Archive, a resource for generations. So, what does this all mean? Why does all of this matter to you? And why should we even care about the business mechanics behind a newspaper? Well, because today the Hartford Courant is no longer just a daily update. It is an actively utilized educational archive. Through global databases like ProQuest, researchers can search every single issue, cover to cover from 1764 to 1995. Furthermore, the state of Connecticut is using the Courant's history in its America 250 curriculum for 5th graders. It's being used right now to teach inclusive stories about marginalized voices, like ensuring that Hannah Bunce Watson's heroic efforts are finally recognized, moving way past her original obituary, which literally only identified her as a wife.
It begs a really important question about these modern threats to journalism. When you look at the 260 years of primary sources the Courant has provided us, from the American Revolution to the World Trade Center, I really want you to think about what we lose if these historic records cease to exist. If local journalism disappears, who is going to be there to write the reliable first draft of our future history?
We're going to leave you with this powerful thought that perfectly summarizes the true value of the Hartford Courant. A newspaper is made of paper and ink, sure, but its real value is the record it leaves behind. Because when a newspaper survives for 260 years, it stops just reporting the history, it becomes history itself. It's a living piece of the American story that leaves us hoping the presses, in whatever format they take, keep rolling for another 260 years. Thanks for joining us on this explainer today, and remember to keep questioning the history all around you.